Next up, we have a fireside chat. With Aidan Hyman, and our next speaker with Aidan is one of the people responsible for blockchain technology having an impact on the world beyond Bitcoin. You know, as co-founder of Ethereum and founder and CEO of ConsenSys, Joe has been a pivotal in directing adoption of Ethereum and in the blockchain space and beyond, with a focus on mainstream adoption. Joe also contributes to ChainSafe vision as a member of the board, and we're super thankful to have Joe here today with us with a fireside chat with Aidan Hyman, ChainSafe's co-founder and CEO. And I am going to promote both of you to the stage. If you could just click the mic and the camera, whichever, and get yourselves on. Perfect. Let's do a quick mic check. How you doing there, Joe and Aidan?
Thanks, Greg.
Doing well, thanks. Thanks
doing
for the
intro. Hey, Aidan. How's it going?
Hey, Joe. Good to see you. Good, doing well, thanks. And yourself?
Doing great, thank you.
I'll let you guys at it.
Great.
Awesome. So yeah, as Greg said, thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate you taking the time. And I know a lot of people are really excited to hear, you know, what you have to say today. It's been a big week for Ethereum in general. So yeah, excited to maybe briefly talk about those things. So firstly, was there a specific moment that you remember when it became clear that you would be focusing your efforts on Ethereum?
Pretty specific. My history in blockchain dates back to early 2011. I guess by the time I was lucky enough to meet Vitalik, which happened because he's a Torontonian and I'm a Torontonian, and I was back over the vacation in December 2013, and I'd actually spoken. I reached out to Anthony Diorio because he was doing things with the Global Bitcoin Alliance that were much healthier sounding than what the Bitcoin Foundation was doing. And so Anthony said, there's this guy, Vitalik Buterin, who just wrote a white paper a month ago. And I said, of course, I've been reading Vitalik for a long time. And we're having a meetup, I think it was January 1st, 2014. So I met Vitalik, got a significant download directly from him. Some of it was one-on-one, some of it was just in the context of the meetup. He sent me the white paper that night. I assimilated it quite rapidly and was very excited. And I had a similar reaction to the Bitcoin white paper, where I essentially was a technologist for most of my life, a software engineer, but was in the world of finance in more recent aspects of my career, and felt like the systems of the world were grinding to a halt. There was too much debt in the system, monetary systems were end-of-lifing, and I was disappointed, bordering on depressed about the future of global economy and geopolitics, and I felt in reading the white paper, the Bitcoin white paper, that we had now an opportunity to, instead of complaining, alerting people that something was wrong, we had a chance to take matters into our own hands and start building alternative foundations for re-architecting of the world systems. And Bitcoin it presented the possibility, and Ethereum, as Vitalik articulated it, defined a way that we could pretty rapidly crystallize that activity. So instead of, with Bitcoin, sort of moving all the functional pieces around like atoms with a scanning tunneling microscope, where you're just really low level bit fiddling in the machine, normal software developers all around the world could get busy architecting the planet in the Ethereum formalism. So it took about 3 weeks, maybe, yeah, about 3 weeks. And we all were invited to a house in, I think a lot of people know this story. We're all invited to a house where we defined some of the early governance and shape of the project in advance of Vitalik delivering his paper at the North American Big Conference in Miami. So in my mind, it was pretty instant, but it took a few weeks to crystallize for a bunch of us. Excited.
Amazing, amazing. And, you know, so many of us are so thankful for those early days and for the creativity beyond the technicality that you and so many people had to see where all of it was going. And that kind of leads us to our next question, which is, how do you encourage creativity within your organizations? You know, how do you get people to think beyond just how we digitally transform current organizations, but really creating the institutional players of tomorrow within a decentralized context?
Creativity is not a problem at ConsenSys. So I guess, you know, we encourage it by example. Lots of us are constantly walking around spitballing. Do you know if that noise is coming from me? Okay. So I'm always spitballing different ideas, problem solving, coming up with outlandish ideas or approaches. Many others at ConsenSys do that. There's a lot of, I think, freedom and comfort to go out on a limb. There is freedom to fail. We come from an unusual place compared to most companies in that we were formed before our mission was possible, in the sense that ConsenSys started when there was no real Ethereum ecosystem. There was no infrastructure, there was no developer tooling, and so we just gathered as many of the best and brightest, most philosophically aligned people to explore the solution space. And that involved just running lots of experiments. And we learned tons from many experiments that didn't ultimately manifest in a product. But it's always been part of our DNA to build out the next thing. And it's I guess when you're building foundations for the emerging global decentralized digital economy, and when you're building some of the elements of it, some of the applications of it, you really have a lot of creative license. And so creativity is just not a problem at ConsenSys.
Totally, and we're all very thankful for that. Kind of, I guess, going back to that perspective you had coming into things in the early days, is there a specific project or group of projects that you would have never really imagined to have taken place in the same maybe timeline or scope that we're seeing today in Ethereum?
Specific project. So I think we imagined a lot of things. So we certainly imagined DeFi, and not exactly, obviously, as it's evolving, and it's really a marvel to observe how incredible the construction of a democratized financial infrastructure layer for the planet is. But we certainly, stable coins were already a thing. They were a thing in the BitShares context, and issuing equity, issuing bonds. We had this notion that there would be bots running around securitizing different kinds of financial instruments in real time and selling off tranches of those things, and that's probably going to happen at some point in the future. ICOs were a thing. we didn't call the Ethereum crowd sale an ICO, but ChainSafe had done one, Mastercoin had done one, Ethereum did it, and so it wasn't really the ICO craze that we were early on, but it was certainly the early stages of DeFi, and the DAO itself was an early stage of DeFi. So we did assume that layer 2 and probably higher layers would be necessary for scaling. We talked sharding, we talked proof of stake in the very, very early days. There was talk of that in the Miami house. So probably the thing that I didn't imagine, and maybe very few people imagined, was that the base trust layer, layer 1, would be less the seat of computation and like data storage for everything, and it's looking like layer 1 will be used as a sort of coordination validation layer rather than having important aspects of the world computer computed
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's a really incredible development that we're seeing in general, even with ETH2, in terms of, I guess, just also going back to the question of creativity in how creative the Ethereum community is, and always working towards what makes sense to get to, what we're looking for, which is mainstream adoption and the utility of a decentralized platform like Ethereum. So I think that fluidity, as long as it moves towards that moving target, is really one of the best qualities in Ethereum and what makes me so excited to be a part of the community. And then I guess kind of one of the questions that kind of relates to that, I mean, they're all kind of related, is what projects in the current landscape or in the ecosystem landscape will be the largest contributors to mainstream adoption that don't really get a lot of attention? And this could be, something on the governance side of things, from a social coordination perspective to, technical things. In general, what is something that not too many people know about, but is a real critical aspect to all of this?
So I almost have to ignore the constraint of not too many people knowing about stuff, because it depends what audience you're talking about. Nobody knows about any of this stuff really on planet Earth. So forgive me for just talking about some of the things that many of us have heard about. So obviously zero knowledge techniques are going to be incredibly important. And we're going to have to get the world really comfortable with that, and get them comfortable with the notion that there is some sort of backdoor or some sort of flaw that's printing a whole bunch of tokens when it should be printing tokens. I know the math is solid, but tell that to the regulators. So you have to split that into enterprise versus consumer. I think that the next 12 months are going to be eye-opening for enterprise, specifically because of a protocol called Baseline and how it will interact with DeFi. So Baseline is a protocol that we pioneered with Ernst & Young with a bit of support from Microsoft. And it essentially enables organizations to coordinate either agreements or business processes via zero-knowledge proofs lodged into mainnet, into a smart contract on mainnet, and to do so without any concern that any private information would leak. So sensitive information is kept in systems of record on everybody's side of their own firewall, and a frame of reference. The Ethereum mainnet helps keep everybody in sync. So there's a ton of traction right now amongst a whole bunch of different companies. Coca-Cola Bottlers of North America made a splash by saying that they're using it to make their supply chain transparent. And the incredibly exciting thing about this is that as DeFi continues to mature and it becomes a large set of pools of capital that can be used for different purposes, whether it's borrowing or insurance or creating derivatives, the elements of baseline interactions are going to be very significantly tokenized. So you can tokenize commodities or products in a procurement network. You will be paying with tokenized money, stable coins. Invoices can be tokenized. Other kinds of instruments in the system can be tokenized. And so we'll see factorization of these tokenized invoices, and the money is there. The mechanisms are there. The companies are going to are already starting to use Baseline, and it's sitting right beside all those magic internet money Legos that represent DeFi, and so it's inevitable. We'll see Baseline projects use DeFi within 12 months, almost certainly.
That's incredibly exciting to hear, and I think important for people to appreciate the significance that will bring. Just as the early internet needed that fuel from traditional business, so do we need to ensure that our tooling makes sense for the real world and not just for our kind of siloed off ecosystem, which, as you said, no one really knows too much about.
Yeah. And let me quickly answer from the perspective of the consumer. So I think games are really going to break out, and DeFi is going to be relevant to normal people. In a world of low and negative interest rates, there's some talk that interest rates will rise, but we'll see. It's not just the tech nerds and the financial nerds that are going to find this stuff interesting. As companies like ours and others get better at making the technology more accessible, more usable, then these bank accounts, effectively these online self-custody bank accounts with lots of different features that provide significant yields in assets that are likely to appreciate rather than become debased by central banks. That's going to be a very compelling proposition. So as the legacy financial world does all the things that it needs to do to keep breathing, those things are going to push more and more people in our direction.
Absolutely. And I just think that people don't really appreciate how much the economics of staking really plays into all of the things you just mentioned, where new influx of monetary supply is now entering the space by the people who are actually facilitating the businesses or the kind of applications at all layers of the stack. And that is completely unheard of, right? We're really taking out a massive layer that right now disintermediates between the capital creation and how we use that capital in our day-to-day lives. So I think that that's something people really don't appreciate, is what proof of stake really does to democratize that access to capital in an incredibly innovative way. I guess, one of the questions, or a couple of the questions that we have that are not really necessarily tech related, but just as a leader, something we thought, you would definitely have an incredible amount of insight on, which is what are, a few of the characteristics that you believe every effective leader needs to have. And this could be, this could answer to a whole different type of, a whole different wide group of types of leaders. But in general, what are things that, people listening that are looking to start, businesses, what are, the qualities that you think should definitely be a part of their repertoire, I guess, as they're going through their day-to-days?
Well, I think there are different potential effective styles of leadership in different situations. Depends on the nature of your organization, depends on the nature of your personnel. For our situation, we have different kinds of governance in our different groups, and we're doing a good job of bringing them all together into a coherent, integrated company. And the projects that do the best have leaders who hold the attitude of being in service to their teammates, and focusing on doing what it takes to enable those around them to be better at their jobs, to be happier, to be satisfyingly autonomous, therefore more creative. We've seen our different projects organically evolve their governance, and we've seen a situation which came to a head a few years ago in our protocol engineering group, where there was the assumption by some of the leaders that they were in control, and they were kind of telling people.
I think we lost him.
I think, am I back? Can you hear me?
Sorry, I was on mute. We can hear you perfectly.
Okay, great. So we had a situation in our protocol engineering group where the leaders of that group, who were extremely well-intentioned, just fell back to normal styles of command and control. And a lot of the people that had joined ConsenSys joined because they thought there was going to be a new approach, a more decentralized approach to governance. And it turned out that we had long discussions, and we suggested that this group was going to be together for a very long time, so it should figure out governance that everybody could buy into and own. And they put together a great system, which keeps getting iterated. They do very structured decision making, and it's been since then a very tight knit, very high functioning group. So a good example of ways that we can, I guess, organize going forward. And a lot of the techniques that were pioneered in that group have made their way across to other projects in ConsenSys.
That's incredible, and I think something that people don't appreciate is that when you are a leader or putting people into and allowing or empowering people in positions of leadership, the goal is not to count and just do that with the expectation of success, but rather with the expectation that just like everyone in the world, they're going to fail. And it's through that failure that the best growth will occur. And a lot of times in traditional organizations, the expectation of leaders is that they will always be successful. And that can obviously never happen. And so I think it's really important to be honest about what we're expecting of people, and that's for them to learn and to grow and to adapt, as we all need to do as well.
Yep.
I'm really enjoying this conversation, and I was wondering, I guess, outside of our questions, what are some lessons that you would impart on any, new entrepreneur in the space, new leader joining the space, or just someone that's sitting on Twitter, sitting on Telegram, and really excited and wants to get involved? What would be, in your opinion, outside of technicalities, things that can that people can do to learn more and really get the most out of this ecosystem?
So there's just so much information out there. So learn a ton, make yourself expert in one or more things. Make sure those one or more things are things that you're really passionate about, because it's going to be a long haul and it's going to be hard. Plan for 7 years or more. Could happen faster, who knows? Back to your comment on failing and making it safe and efficient to fail. You do want to, moving towards a success is basically an obstacle course, and you got to bump off lots of things, and each of those could be considered little failures or shaping of your ultimate destination. And so fail a lot while interspersing little successes that move the project forward, and make sure you survive. If you survive, you will win, by definition.
Absolutely, and I think it's really important for people to understand that to succeed requires failure, right? Like, these things don't happen in isolation of one another, and it is the person's ability to handle those failures that is what leads to that success. But as you're saying, you need to survive, and you need a plan, and you need to have a coherent system in place for how we handle those things. Because
if you look at proof of stake, I mean, were there so many failures along the way between those discussions in Miami and Tuesday morning? Or was it just Vitalik and others wielding a chisel to construct the proof of stake sculpture?
Absolutely, that's an actual use case for how these things do evolve. And a lot of people along the way would always question when and why not, and just be confused really with this organic, creative, innovative process that is really unique in the Ethereum space, where this notion that just because we had an idea at one point does not mean that that needs to shape the way in which we move forward. And I personally find that to be incredibly transparent and just honest, right? Because at the end of the day, it is the ability to pivot effectively that allows you to survive. And so, I think that that's the biggest value that we bring as a community, is the ability for anyone to post anything on ETH Research, and for that to somehow have an impactful trajectory, or to impact the trajectory in an impactful way within this incredibly, incredibly large community. And that's something that is quite unique. Yeah, so we don't have too much time left. And I guess just a really great way to just maybe leave things off outside of technical improvements to Ethereum in the coming years, outside of baseline protocol, this notion of staking as an economic kind of incentive to securitizing a network as big as Ethereum is really unseen before. What are, in your opinion, the most exciting opportunities? We're seeing things like staking derivatives taking place. What are these exciting new business models and new ways in which people can start to think about what will be necessary in the future of Ethereum? Because not many people know that Tachyon had an accelerator a year previous to the DeFi summer focused on DeFi. And at the time, a lot of people were, maybe not aware of how much effort was going into creating not just a narrative, but a group of projects that would then define what was the last summer and now going into 2021, which is this widespread narrative that is taking over Ethereum. And people don't really appreciate how much planning and effort went into that, right? And so my question to you is, with proof of stake, what's next for these new and innovative projects?
So what I'm excited about is, I guess, related to the what could be considered a cascading global economic and geopolitical collapse that we're all embroiled in, where there are health issues that are helping drive economic health issues. And the political systems on the planet are just so mind-blowingly broken. They don't represent anybody, or they represent a very, very tiny percentage of the people that they're supposed to represent. And that's in good times, let alone where we are right now, which is just preposterous. So what I'm excited about is integration, is coherence amongst a whole bunch of systems. It's granularity of governance, granularity of application. So we've built a technology for a new trust foundation for the planet. We are enabling the planet to move from systems that are based on subjective, generally centralized trust systems, which are pretty manipulable. Often they work quite well. They've brought society tremendous distances, but we can do better. We can now build automated and objective trust as the foundation for trust for the planet, and that foundation has enabled this new financial infrastructure to start being built. And the trust foundation enables trustworthy collaboration. So whether it's DAOs or LAOs or other kinds of collaboration constructs, we can gather people or organizations or bots into a single framework where everybody knows the rules, so where things are quite transparent. These constructs can create their own magic internet money. They can use that money or other money that they acquire to incentivize people to achieve the goals of this particular group. And staking is going to be a huge part of that. Staking represents the ability for people, small organizations, to have economic and political agency in many of the things they care about, whether it's a game or a music band or a research project, a cure for a disease, or just a business. And what I think is going to be really incredible is rather than having two parties or three parties, as in certain countries, or one party as in many countries, we can have as many parties, as many political and economic organizations as are needed in real time by the society. And so a group of people identifies a problem, they form this construct which can define its goals, raise money, execute the goals, and then it can sort of diffuse back into the sea of potentiality, where those people and that capital, maybe they've already solved a problem and they don't need to keep that together, or maybe it becomes a persistent or durable construct. But the beauty is that the focus will be granular. People will see their issues resolved in as close to real time as is humanly possible, I think. And it's going to be a very fluid, very fast-moving, hopefully much healthier society.
100%. I think everyone listening can definitely agree with that. And, you know, that to me is one of the things that makes me most proud to be able to work in this space, is that so many of us really do feel the way that you've just kind of expressed yourself. And that is something that I don't see in other industries, where you have just a widespread, general, maybe pragmatic perspective on what is going on now, but an optimism for what can come later. And maybe that goes through some very negative kind of times, but there is hope and light at the end of the tunnel if people do decide to contribute to that vision. And so I really appreciate you taking the time to talk today, Joe, and for helping shape us on our journey as we grow. We couldn't be more proud to have that. No one else knows the things we're going through more than you. So thank you so much for everything you do for the space and for ChainSafe as a whole.
Cool. Thanks, Aidan. It's been a pleasure. May all your chains stay safe.
Thank you so much, Joe. Have a great day. Talk soon. Bye-bye.